Hey, what's up, people? Welcome to my review and in depth analysis for Star Wars Dark Empire 2, written by Tom Veitch and penciled by Cam Kennedy. And I have to honestly say that I wasn't really feeling this one nearly as much as I enjoyed the first Dark Empire. Now, Dark Empire 1, I absolutely adore that comic. I thought it was outstanding. Sometimes I'm kind of on the fence of whether I'd accept it in my own personal canon or not to because, Palpatine comes back. But there's things in that comic that I love so much. Namely, seeing Luke and Leia come together as Jedi and take the Emperor down. I absolutely love seeing Leia as a Jedi. And I think that comic really illustrated that perfectly. Um, and I love the story, right? The only thing that I kind of am on the fence time to time about is the whole notion of the Emperor coming back as a clone. But sometimes in my mind, I think it's a fun idea. And then at other times, I think it may undermine Vader's redemption, right? But nevertheless, even you can even enjoy it in a what if kind of sense, right? You can enjoy it as an alternative universe or alternate universe, whatever. It's still an enjoyable read nonetheless. However, Dark Empire 2, there were moments in this comic where I just rolled my eyes because I thought it was absurd. Now, for me to use the word absurd in the context of the old EU, even basically to use that word in the context of the old EU, especially during the Bantam era, is kind of hard because there was a lot of absurd stuff going on. As much as I love the Bantam era of the old EU, there was some ridiculous stuff, right? Dark Saber, Callista, and there was great stuff, right? And we focus on the great stuff. But this comic book, man, it just had so many ridiculous things that I was just kind of like, I don't know about this, man. I mean, granted, I read it and I wasn't bored, so I will say it's an entertaining read, but there was a lot of things that I just did not like and that I thought were absurd, and we're going to get into that. But one thing that I found absolutely absurd was just how the Emperor came back, right? Now, obviously, I knew that the Emperor, Palpatine, was going to return. I mean, I knew that even before I picked up the damn comic. But I was like, okay, he's going to come back. Yes, that not only does it undermine the original trilogy, but it undermines the previous entry in the series, Dark Empire 1, which I thought was a fantastic ending to Palpatine, right? Luke and Leia coming together and basically using the power of the Force to kind of banish him to the netherworlds or whatever, right? Just basically just destroy him, and it was great. So I was like, okay, he's gonna come back, and obviously, yeah, it's redundant, but maybe this can be a fun read, right? And I kind of expected a more elaborate explanation as to how the Emperor came back again, but it is it there is no explanation. I mean, the way it was done reminded me of the Rise of Skywalker with the whole meme, somehow Palpatine returned. This book is literally somehow Palpatine returned. That's how he comes back in this comic. I was flabbergasted at how ridiculous his return was in regards to not providing any explanation whatsoever. One, I swear, on one page they just literally like, oh, Palpatine's gone, he's banished to the netherworlds, and then literally on the next panel he's just standing on the in the doorway and like, I'm back. And then they're like, oh, the Emperor's back. Oh, okay, all right, he's back. Let's get to work. And that's literally how it happens, and I was just like floored at how just lazy the writing was for that. I mean, like, come on. Like, you really ended his banishment to the netherworlds on such a powerful note in the previous entry, right? And you're not gonna at least give a thorough explanation as to how he can return. Like, I mean, just at least explain it. I mean, but I already hear the dissenters out there to my argument that, oh, he jumped into another clone body. I mean, that's all in well, but in the context of how it's revealed, literally the Darksiders or the Dark Jedi were destroying the remaining clones, and they literally say, like, he's stuck between the netherworlds or whatever, and then he's just like standing in the doorway like, I'm back, right? And I'm just like, nah, man. Like, can he at least explain how he was able to maneuver and out of the netherworlds and occupy another clone body? But it's not explained. And right then and there, and it happens fairly early in this story, right then and there, I knew that this book was going to be inferior to the previous volume. Like, I knew with absolute certainty that it was going to be inferior, and it was. And there's other reasons why, and we're going to get to that. So let's begin this in-depth analysis of Dark Empire 2. So this book opens up with introduction, right? Exposition, trying to recreate the opening crawl to the films kind of feeling. And it basically explains that Operation Shadow Hand has been initiated by the remnants of the Empire. What does that mean? It means that 7 Dark Jedi have been deployed by the Emperor basically to restore the Empire to its former glory. And at the beginning of the book, they're led by the Dark Jedi, the Dark Side Executor known as Cedrus. And basically, on the other side of the galaxy, or with the Rebels, or the New Republic, if you will, Luke Skywalker is basically consulting the mentor that's inside the Jedi holocron that he obtained from the Emperor in the previous entry in Dark Empire 1. So in Dark Empire 1, Palpatine had a holocron, and it was his most prized possession, and Luke was able to retrieve it, right? Especially after him and Leia defeated Palpatine. Now, Luke believes that some Jedi may have escaped the Great Purge that was initiated by Darth Vader when Darth Vader hunted down and destroyed the Jedi Knights. Now, one of these Jedi that escaped Vader was known as Cam Soluzar. And what Luke did was basically Cam Soluzar. Cam was originally a Dark Jedi, and Luke was able to rescue him, basically turn him over to the light side of the Force, and now Cam is Luke's new student. Now, at Balmorra, a planet that was once part of the New Republic and now is being retaken by the Empire, but there's a rebellion. There's kind of a rebellion brewing. And now that the Emperor is dead. So now that the Emperor is dead, there's a little rebellion brewing, even though the Empire wants to make it one of its systems, right? And basically, a war is being fought with droids. And these droids are advanced, right? And the war is being fought until the Dark Jedi deploy cyborgs with brains empowered by the dark side of the Force. Like, now, I know it sounds absurd and silly, but whatever, right? This isn't even one of my main criticisms here. Now, these new droids are kind of, they're kind of trouble for the rebellion on this planet. But Balmorra also has a new droid with molecular shielding. And the Empire basically grants them freedom in exchange for this new technology with the molecular shielding. So in other words, there's this battle going on and kind of like this Cold War thing going on. Each side is revealing their new technology. And once the rebels show their new technology, Cedrus, the Dark Jedi leading this campaign, is like, well, hold up. Why don't we like do a little surrender? Let these rebels think that we're giving them their freedom in exchange for this new technology. Then, once we have this new tech in our hands, we'll snuff them out of existence. So that's Cedrus's plan, to destroy them with their own technology later. Now, the governor of Balmorra, named Beltane, plans on allowing the New Republic to intercept the droids, these new droids that are basically going to be transported to the Empire, so they can use it to take the Empire's command post, the Citadel. So in other words, what's going to happen is basically the governor of Balmorra is just being kind of like this, he's being two-faced over here, he's being a double agent, and he's going to allow the New Republic or soldiers or agents of the New Republic to hide inside these droids as they're being shipped to the Empire. And then when the time is right, they're going to attack. So it's kind of like the whole Trojan horse thing from Greek mythology, where you have the enemy hidden inside the giant Trojan and it's presented as a gift, and then they bring it inside their headquarters and then they come out of the Trojan. Basically, they let the enemy inside without their knowledge. So that's what the governor is proposing or planning in alliance with the New Republic. Now, everybody but Luke Skywalker wants to attack the Empire directly at the Citadel. You see, Luke, he would rather attack the command posts at each world or each planet that the Empire has basically taken over. And he wants to do that because he thinks it's more important to free other worlds rather than attack the Empire at its head. Because if you attack the Empire at its headquarters, the headquarters may crumble, but then all those other systems are still being occupied by the Empire, right? Unfortunately, no one is feeling Luke's sentiments there. They disagree with him, right? They want to attack the Citadel. Now, the holocron tells Leia to find Jedi Vima Dabota at Nar Shaddaa. Now, Vima Dabota is a Jedi. She's like this old decrepit Jedi woman that was seen in the first Dark Empire very briefly. And she gave this gift. I think it was a lightsaber to Leia. And it was a very little brief scene. And one thing that I appreciate about this volume was touching up on this, on expanding upon Vima's character. And we come across a lot of Jedi that escaped the Great Purge from Vader. And I honestly want to say I got a lot of criticisms for this volume, but one thing that I really liked and I thought it was the best part about Dark Empire 2 was this lore regarding all these Jedi that escaped the Great Purge and all this lore pertaining to the Dark Jedi that is basically working for the Empire. I mean, that was the interesting stuff. Everything else was just kind of like ridiculous, and I'm gonna get to those criticisms very soon. So Leia is told by the master inside the holocron to find Vima. Now, over in regard to what's going on with the Empire, Cedrus is basically infighting with the Emperor's inner circle, and the inner circle basically, they at this point are destroying all the remaining Emperor clones. And Cedrus laughs at them. And the Emperor just, this is where I was saying in the introduction, like, so Cedrus is like, you're trying to destroy all the clones. And the reason why they wanted, the inner circle wants to destroy all the clones is because they don't want the Emperor to come back. They don't want any chance of him coming back. But they're like, he's stuck in the netherworlds. We're going to destroy all the clone bodies. We don't want him to come back because we want, we kind of want to be the leaders of the new empire. Cedrus laughs at them. And then all of a sudden, the Emperor's just standing there like, what's up? How's it going? Somehow, Palpatine returned inside another clone body. No explanation whatsoever as to how he was able to navigate outside the netherworlds. Just accept it. Thought this was total bullshit. Anyway, at Nar Shaddaa, Boba Fett is being threatened by Dark Jedi. Now, it turns out like there's some lore here in regards to Boba Fett that is kind of contradictory to the lore, not only in the prequel era, which we find out that Boba Fett is a clone of Jango Fett, but this is before that. So this is even contradicting what existed before Attack of the Clones, which was kind of in the Bounty Hunter Tales, Bantam era EU novels. So in this book, it literally states that Boba Fett was a former stormtrooper that killed his superior officer. But Boba Fett was able to escape after a brief battle. And that just shows you that having a canon, a Star Wars canon, is pointless. No matter if it's the Disney era, the prequel era, the pre-prequel era, it's just impossible to keep this story straight and together when you have so many cooks in the kitchen. But nevertheless, that is interesting to say the least. That little backstory for Boba Fett in this story. Now, the Dark Jedi slaughtered this crowd in an attempt to hunt that Jedi that Leia's looking for, Vima. So Han and Leia and Chewie are together looking for this Jedi named Vima. And the Dark Jedi just slaughtered this entire crowd in an attempt to find her, right? So this is to illustrate the ruthlessness of the Dark Jedi. Now, Han and Leia are also being hunted by bounty hunters, which is why Boba Fett is there, because of the death of Jabba the Hutt. And this is kind of redundant. So this was also something that happened in the previous entry. So my biggest criticism for this volume is that it's redundant, man. It's redundant. Dark Empire 2 is redundant as hell. And it's nowhere near as enjoyable as the first entry. And not only that, but there's a lot of ridiculous stuff in this story. Now, what happens after this is that Han's friends basically abandon him. So Sala, and I forgot the name of the other individual who were basically Han's friends that were trying to help him out as far as getting to Nar Shaddaa, they basically abandon him and Leia and Chewie because they want to go find their ship, and also they're just tired of being hunted and put in danger as a result of accompanying Han and all these missions and things like this. So Sala and her comrade basically take off. They're like, see you later, and they go to Biss to find their ship. Now, Boba Fett, he is able to find the Falcon, and you have this nice little action sequence involving a game of chicken. So basically you got the Millennium Falcon and Boba Fett and Slave One going just head to head, and it looks like this head-on collision is going to happen, and then at the last minute the Falcon escapes and Boba Fett almost wrecks Slave One. I thought it was a nice little action scene in this volume. Now, Han and Leia and Chewie, they ultimately end up finding Vima, and they discover that she is a descendant of Nomi Sunrider, who was in the Tales of the Jedi comic books by Dark Horse. And Nomi Sunrider, those stories with her in those comics are my favorite. I absolutely love Nomi Sunrider. And like I said, this is the best thing about Dark Empire 2 is all the lore involving the Dark Jedi and the Jedi. I love this. I love discovering that Vima was a descendant of Nomi. Now, once again, Boba Fett decides to attack. And Chewie ends up kicking his ass. And he basically uses his jetpack to send him to the ceiling. And Boba Fett just, hits his head on the ceiling. And Chewie is able to take his helmet. So he takes his helmet, and it even states in the panel that he's going to use this as a trophy. So I was like, wow, Boba Fett can't get a break, man. He's depicted as a bumbling idiot, to be frank, in this series. Now, Palpatine commands Cedrus to capture Luke Skywalker and his student Cam on the planet Ossus. So Ossus is a former Jedi homeworld during the Sith War, which you can actually see the events of the Sith War that they're referring to, again, in the Tales of the Jedi comic series by Dark Horse, which is fantastic. So while they're on Ossus, Luke and Cam, they find Force-sensitive warrior shamans known as the Yasana. Namely, they find Raph and his sister Jem. Now, this is where things start to get a little ridiculous. Now, first, I wanted to say some criticisms. That one main criticism that I have for this volume, besides it feeling redundant, besides the ridiculousness of the Emperor coming back so unceremoniously, is that Luke's story takes a backseat, I feel, to what's going on with Han, Leia, Lando, and Chewie. And I thought that was disappointing, because when I pick up Dark Empire 1, I feel like Luke and Leia are the main focus, and the whole Jedi overcoming the dark side sentiments, that's the main focus. But in Dark Empire 2, I want to say 70% of it I felt was dedicated to Han, Leia, and their stuff. And Leia's not really doing Jedi stuff, right? And I kind of wanted more focus on the Dark Jedi, Luke and his students. So it sounds interesting as I reiterate it to you right now, but honestly, it left me wanting more, because that is the most interesting thing about this volume. And one ridiculous thing that came out of this encounter with the Yasana, namely Raph and Jem, is that Luke falls in love with Jem. He falls in love with one of his students. Again, just like he fell in love with Callista, one of his students. And I'm just kind of like, man, one thing I can honestly say was I didn't know about this. This is not really talked about outside of this story. I mean, you can ignore the Callista trilogy all you want, but you come across the name Callista. Everybody knows Callista. And for the most part, everybody knows a way to stay away from those stories. I didn't read the other two volumes in the Callista trilogy. I just read the first one, and it was awful. It was completely awful. And I'll just take the word of the critics and not even bother reading the other two. But Luke falling in love with his student, I was just like, it felt forced. He just met her. He literally just met Jem, and then they try to force this whole like, oh, there's this strong feeling between us, and then you get a panel where they're embracing each other. Maybe there's a kiss in there. I don't remember. But it just felt like, really? I mean, I can already tell you that this isn't going to last, just because I've never heard of Jem before outside of this story. And that's exactly what happens, and we'll get to that. But this felt contrived as hell, man. And now it was ridiculous. Now, ultimately, what ends up happening is the Darksiders find Luke and Cam on this planet, and they begin their attack. Luke basically kicks some serious ass when these Dark Jedi attempt to attack him, and Cedrus attacks Luke, and Luke kicks his ass, right? And Cedrus, he tries to take Jem hostage, and we see that something interesting here was that there's this tree, this Jedi tree, And as soon as I saw this, I immediately thought that The Last Jedi stole this idea from this book. I mean, you could see, when you read this volume and when you read a lot of this EU stuff, you see that the Disney trilogy stole so many ideas from the expanded universe while pretending to be new, fresh, and exciting and original. I really don't understand why they decided to disregard the expanded universe if they're just going to recycle the same ideas. I thought that was stupid of Disney, but that's not surprising considering the fact that it's Disney and Disney is stupid. Now, so Cedrus, he tries to summon this epic amount of force lightning. And as he has Jem hostage, right? And it turns out that this tree is alive. The tree is a Jedi. Believe it or not, the tree is a Jedi. Again, another ridiculous thing. I mean, sure, it's not too ridiculous. I get the whole like force is inside all living beings and things like that. But the tree is a Jedi. In fact, the tree is the Jedi that was the holocron instructor in the holocron that basically told Leia to go find Vima. So this is that person, but now they're a tree, right? And again, I thought of the tree from The Last Jedi, even though that tree isn't alive. So they're going for some like Lord of the Rings Ents thing kind of thing over here. And Cedrus tries to summon Force Lightning, but the tree counters that attempt with its own power. And as a result of this, they both die in this massive energy explosion, right? Jem pledges to Luke to be her student, right? And that's ultimately how this little sequence ends. It was interesting. Not gonna lie. Now, at this point in the story, Lando is going to be the one to try to override the droids in order to attack the Citadel. So in other words, Lando is going to be the one in charge of the attack on the Citadel. So he will be kind of overseeing this whole campaign where you hide inside the droids and sneak into the Citadel on some Trojan horse kind of stuff. So that's what Lando is going to be up to. Now, here's where things get ridiculous, and once again, I'm reminded of the Disney trilogy. So the Empire has a new weapon that basically shoots missiles that can exit hyperspace at exact coordinates. And this weapon is called the Galaxy Weapon or something like that. The Galaxy Gun, the Galaxy Weapon, some BS like that. And I immediately thought of Starkiller Base, right? Isn't that what Starkiller Base was? It could shoot lasers through hyperspace at exact coordinates, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, here we are. Another idea taken from the EU. And, it's not a good idea. It'd be one thing if Disney was taking good ideas from the EU, but instead it took the worst ideas from the EU instead of the good ones. So I'm not a fan of this ridiculous doomsday weapon, right? And that is literally the biggest criticism that I have and many have for the old EU Bantam era was just too many goddamn doomsday weapons, right? You already had the world devastators in the first Dark Empire, which, I wasn't really against because it didn't feel Death Star-ish, right? It's a doomsday weapon, sure, but it didn't feel Death Star-ish. But this Galaxy Gun or Galaxy Weapon feels too much like another Death Star. And it is. It's another Death Star because later on in the story, a planet gets destroyed. Just like, when the Death Star attacked Alderaan. So, the Emperor, at this point, knights 2 new Dark Jedi, and Luke Skywalker senses it. Is it the return of the Emperor? Luke asks himself. And because one thing I failed to note is that at this point in the story, our protagonists aren't 100% sure. They're not 100% sure that the Emperor has returned again, right? But now Luke is starting to sense some things, right? Now, Luke also discovers a hidden Jedi library on this planet. And Raph and Jem leave the tribe to become Jedi with Luke Skywalker. So they leave their tribe of shamans to become full-fledged Jedi with Luke Skywalker. Now, at this point in the story, Boba Fett is still after Han Solo. And during another chase involving Boba Fett, Han, Leia, and Chewie in the Millennium Falcon with Vima. So now Vima is with Leia and Han. They escape into a gas cloud. And inside this gas cloud, they find a steam-powered battleship or like world or something going on here. And I thought this was stupid as hell. This made me roll my eyes, right? A steam-powered battleship, like a huge one that's basically like a world inside of a gas cloud. Like, I know that for Star Wars, this is fantasy in space, and there's obviously going to be some kind of suspension of disbelief. But a steam-powered ship basically in space is just absurd to me, man. It's just ridiculous. So basically, the individuals or the occupants, the civilians inside this steam-powered giant battleship, they live cut off from the rest of the galaxy, and they capture the Millennium Falcon. Now, the leader is a half-man, half-machine, basically, or you could look at it as a half-man encased in prosthetic machinery. And basically, this leader turns out to also be a former Jedi that was initially being hunted down by Darth Vader during the Great Purge. But he looks ridiculous, man. He literally looks like Humpty Dumpty. He looks like a floating egg. So that's how his little prosthetic body is. I guess the only thing that survived was his head and spine. And now he's just in this floating little container that looks like a giant egg. Like, he literally looks like Humpty Dumpty. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. And yeah, so there's that. Now, while this is going down, Lando launches his attack at the Citadel hidden inside the droids. And the Emperor, Palpatine, decides to retaliate with beasts that I guess were created by the dark side. And they look like Rancors, but they're like super evil and they're infused with the dark side of the Force, blah, 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 kind of thing going on. And again, just like I said, there was too much focus, in my opinion, on Han, Leia, at Nar Shaddaa, being hunted by the bounty hunters. Here, I feel like there's too much focus on the Citadel attack and not on Luke and the students and the Dark Jedi, the interesting stuff, in my opinion. I feel like Luke, again, is barely in this book. He's barely in this book. And despite kind of being advertised that he'd be front and center, but whatever. Now, the Emperor allows the rebels to escape in order to use his new galaxy weapon to attack them at the rebel headquarters, or the New Republic headquarters, because I guess they're not the rebellion anymore. Now, the galaxy weapon can attack in hyperspace. So again, this is similar to Starkiller Base in the Disney trilogy. Now, the Falcon gets a new lightning gun, and this new lightning gun, so at this steamship, battleship, whatever world, they're able to fit this new gun on the Falcon, this lightning gun. And ultimately, it's this new lightning gun on the Falcon that takes out Boba Fett. So now they're no longer being hunted by bounty hunters as far as this volume goes. So they go to New Alderaan to see Jaina and Jacen, which were Leia and Han's children, who have been born already. Now, another important thing that I failed to note is that Leia is pregnant with Anakin. So Anakin Solo he's coming. Leia's pregnant with him. So more redundancy, right? So in the first volume, Leia was pregnant with Jaina and Jason. Okay. Now in this volume, Leia is pregnant with Anakin Solo. And I'm just like, oh man, it just feels redundant, man. Honestly, this story did not need to be told. Things would have been fine if they had just came out with Dark Empire 1 and left it at that. That's my honest opinion of this story. So they go to New Alderaan to see the twins. So they're doing their little rendezvous over there because it's been a long time since they've seen their children. In fact, it's mentioned that they only see their children maybe a couple times a year, which is kind of sad if you really think about it. So Luke, at this point in the story, is training his new students, Cam, Jem, and her brother. And at this point, we start to see Jem and Luke falling in love. They have this exchange where they're like, I've never felt like this before. There's something about you. I feel like I've known you for 1,000 years. And they embrace and then they kiss. And I'm over here like, this is bullshit. And it is. And while that's going down, the Galaxy weapon destroys Pinnacle Base, which was essentially the New Republic's headquarters or a big military target for the New Republic. And the way that it's illustrated totally reminds me of when Starkiller Base attacked the New Republic in The Force Awakens, right? And again, another doomsday weapon that's just like the Death Star. Yawn. How boring. More redundancy. Again, if there's one word to describe Dark Empire 2, it's redundant and maybe unnecessary. And once this Galaxy weapon destroys Pinnacle Base, like they're literally trying to sell the reader the notion that the New Republic is dead. The Alliance is dead. Everybody's gone. Mon Mothma's dead. Akbar is dead. There's no more New Republic. What does this remind you of? The Force Awakens. They destroyed the New Republic. I mean, when I read this, I was just like, holy shit. Wow. That really sucks. It sucks both for this story, Dark Empire 2, and it sucks that literally The Force Awakens stole a terrible idea and put it in their terrible movie. Right? So yeah, they're starting to basically convey to the reader that the Alliance is dead, the New Republic's gone, everybody's dead. We know that's not true because if you read all the hundreds of books that came out after this, Mon Mothma and Akbar and all of them are well alive. They're alive and well, man. So it wasn't dramatic whatsoever. That's the point I'm trying to make. Now, on Vijun, the planet Vijun, which basically holds Darth Vader's former castle, a rebel is being tortured by Dark Jedi in order to reveal the location of New Alderaan. Why? Because the Emperor wants the Jedi. He wants the Jedi twins. He wants Jaina and Jason. He wants Leia's children. He wants all the Jedi, right? All of them. So this rebel is being tortured by the Dark Jedi to reveal the location of New Alderaan, and ultimately they are successful. The torture was too much, and he reveals the location. And the Emperor wants all the Jedi captured, and he sends the Dark Jedi. Now Luke and Jem are in love, blah, 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 more of that nonsense, and they go to New Alderaan. So Luke and his students go to New Alderaan, and it's such a great coincidence that they went to that location because they were very much needed by Han, Leia, and Chewie. And why? Because the Darksiders attack. And they poison Luke Skywalker in their attack, so that totally incapacitates him. Luke is not able to participate in the defense of New Alderaan. Now Leia kills these Jedi these dark Jedi. I'm sorry. Leia kills these dark Jedi, but during the attack, the Darksider attack, Jem is mortally wounded. And as a result of her wounds, she dies. And again, it was a little sad, despite the romance between her and Luke being forced and contrived as hell. It was a little sad. It really was. I mean, what can I say? Now, Vima uses her powers to heal Luke because, again, he's poisoned. And the Imperials decide to obliterate New Alderaan. And Han, thank God, is able to bring back reinforcements, Lando and Sala. So the friend that abandoned him, he was able to bring them back. So Lando and Sala come, and they are able to rescue the Jedi and go to Nespis 8. And when they go to Nespis 8, they discover that Mothma and the rebel leaders, or the New Republic leaders, are still alive. Wow, it wasn't surprising at all. We all knew they were still alive. And Leia gives birth to Anakin. And that's basically how this story ends. It ends very open-ended because we know Palpatine's still alive. So we know that we have to read one more unnecessary volume in this story to see the Emperor get defeated again. Honestly, like I said in the introduction, I'm not a fan of this story whatsoever. It was redundant. There was some ridiculous off-the-wall nonsense that happened. What was interesting about this story, that being the Dark Jedi, the Jedi lore with Luke and his new students, it wasn't even at the forefront of the story. It wasn't. I felt like it took a backseat to all the other nonsense that was going on. Not explaining how the Emperor came back really sucked. This galaxy gun thing really sucked. Yeah, not a fan. Totally redundant. I really feel like if you haven't read this story, don't. I just saved you a lot of time. Don't read it. Stick to Dark Empire 1. That was good enough. You didn't need to do it again. You didn't need to bring the Emperor back again. And I dread having to read the next volume just to see what happened here, right? That being said, all those negative things being said, I was able to sit and read it without being bored out of my mind. Like, it was entertaining. So that I'll give it that. And because of that, I'll give it a C-. So I'm giving Dark Empire 2 a C- because it was readable. But once I was done, I felt like, you know what, I'm never going to read this ever again. So make of that what you will. Thank you guys for listening to my review, an in-depth analysis for Dark Empire 2. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and share. May the Force be with you. And last but not least, one love, people. Take care.